Hello, friends. Ambient glow at 10 o'clock. Actually, it's about 20 till. Hmm. And there's no time like the present. Got some utilities running. So, in the meantime, good coffee. Very good. Could have a little breakfast with you, wherever you might be, and explore a gem, really, that I haven't really gotten into, but it's a bit of magic. And I got through the foreword, and I thought it was interesting enough to at least pull out a little bit of reading. So that you might enjoy some of this philosophy with me. All right. I'll let that cool off a bit. It's a book called Creative Evolution by Henri Bergson. We're just going to start at chapter 1 and explore a bit. The evolution of life, mechanism, and teleology, the existence of which we are most assured and which we know best, is unquestionably our own. For every other object, we have notions which may be considered external and superficial, whereas of ourselves, our perception is internal and profound. What then do we find? In this privileged case, what is the precise meaning of the word exist? Let us recall here briefly the conclusions of an earlier work. I find, first of all, that I pass from state to state. I am warm or cold. I am merry or sad. I work or I do nothing. I look at what is around me, and I think of something else. Sensations, feelings, volitions, ideas. Such are the changes into which my existence is divided, in which color in it turns. I change, then, without ceasing. But this is not saying enough. Change is far more radical than we are at first inclined to suppose. For I speak of each of my states as if it formed a block and were a separate whole. I say indeed that I change, but the change seems to me to reside in the passage from one state to the next, of each state taken separately, and I am apt to think that it remains the same during all the time it prevails. Nevertheless, a slight effort of attention would reveal to me that there is no feeling, no idea, no volition, which is not undergoing change every moment. If a mental state ceased to vary, its duration would cease to flow. Let us take the most stable of internal states, the visual perception of a motionless external object. The object may remain the same. I may look at it from the same side, at the same angle, in the same light. Nevertheless, the vision I now have of it differs from that which I have just had, even if only because the one is an instant older than the other. My memory is there, which conveys something of the past into the present. My mental state, as it advances on the road of time, is continually swelling with the duration which it accumulates. It goes on increasing, rolling upon itself as a snowball on the snow. Still more, this is the case with states more deeply internal, such as sensations, feelings, desires, etc., which do not correspond like a simple visual perception to an unvarying external object. But it is expedient to disregard this uninterrupted change and to notice it only when it becomes sufficient to impress a new attitude on the body, a new direction on the attention. Then, and then only, we find that our state has changed. The truth is that we change without ceasing, and that the state itself is nothing but change. This amounts to saying that there is no essential difference between passing from one state to another and persisting in the same state. If the state, which remains the same, is more varied than we think, on the other hand, the passing from one state to another resembles more than we imagine, a single state being prolonged. The transition is continuous. But just because we close our eyes to the unceasing variation of every physical or psychical, state, we are obliged, when the change has become so considerable as to force itself on our attention, to speak as if a new state were placed alongside the previous one. Of this new state, we assume that it remains unvarying in its turn, and so on endlessly. The apparent discontinuity of the psychical life is then due to our attention being fixed on it by a series of separate acts. Actually, there is only a gentle slope, but in following the broken lines of our acts of attention, we think we perceive separate steps. True, our psychic life is full of the unforeseen. 1,000 incidents arise, which seem to be cut off from those which precede them, and to be disconnected from those which follow. Discontinuous though they appear, however, in point of fact, they stand out against the continuity of a background on which they are designed, and to which indeed they owe the intervals that separate them. They are the beats of the drum which break forth here and there in the symphony. Our attention fixes on them because they interest it more, but each of them is borne by the fluid mass of our whole psychical existence. Each is only the best illuminated point of a moving zone which comprises all that we feel or think or will. All, in short, that we are at any given moment. It is this entire zone, in reality, that makes up our state. Now, states thus defined cannot be regarded as distinct elements. They continue each other in an endless flow. It's a bit on duration. I like it. I think for philosophy, it's beautifully written. I mean, I am a fan of Hume, and I find Kant to be extremely dry. But this is a real treasure. I believe he was he may have been a Frenchman during the time of the Vichy government in France, when the Nazis were there. And it might have been that he denounced anti-Semitism and maybe had some problems with the Nazis or something. I'm not really terribly certain what his history is. I know, like any rational thinking person, Nazis gotta irritate the piss out of you. Some things never change. I'm having oatmeal and coffee, by the way. From one state to another, I guess. First I was hungry, and now I am becoming full. little coffee. One thing about oatmeal is you can't let it go from too hot to too cold. But that story of the Goldilocks and the Three Bears and the porridge, you know, too hot, too cold, just right. You know, when oatmeal gets too cold, it's just disgusting. A mealy mash. When it's too hot, can't eat it. So there's that delicate little window as we have this transition between one phase to another, where the experience is best absorbed, best perceived in that small window of the thing that we call time. So I assure you, I will take advantage of it. I'm going to eat my oatmeal while it's in that window. And reflect for a moment on what I just read. Now, I'm trying to think of a way to maybe start to schedule some of the ambient glow radio presentations, but as I mentioned to a subscriber in a comment earlier, it's just anytime that I plan something comes up. You know, the dogs have to go out. Food has to be prepared. Somebody wants to walk through the house naked. So, the usual. Or I'll have an epiphany of some sort. And, well, I'm not going to stop writing what needs to be written. You've got to get it down before it disappears. And I'm working with a utility right now, so forgive me. Alright, do this for the next 2,552 conflicts. I think we can do that. And perhaps we will get a guest because, of course, I can't announce because of just the nature of the thing. I said, well, order out of chaos. I think it's they attribute it to the Illuminati, but I believe it's a Rosicrucian phrase. The Rosy Cross. Fantastic. Even instant oatmeal. Yeah, sometimes you take the time to spend an entire hour cooking down a pot of oatmeal, which, add just a little bit of molasses and brown sugar, milk, and, cook the steel cut oats over time. It really, really does. It is superior. But I didn't want to spend an hour cooking oatmeal today. I'd rather spend my time here working on a texture project, basically. And trying out another style. See, this is just a style. Because I think for content creators on YouTube to progress, we need to experiment with different styles. So, really, I think the progenitor of this type of style was personally, I think it wasn't necessarily H. Thomas Ackerman, but I really do like his conversational nature as he explores different ideas of dissertation. So it's very different than Stefan Molyneux when he first came across with endless amounts of slides and just make you feel like you're sitting in philosophy 101, and it just not really a whole lot of fun. Plus, I disagree wholeheartedly with most of his assertions. It's like sometimes, it's like he tries to be Captain Obvious, but comes out of just there's just always seems to be a discontinuity in his logos to me, but yeah, that's why really not my cup of tea. Nor really is Jordan Peterson or the rest of these psyop guys out here. Well, maybe not. Maybe they're just the anointed ones. And I feel sorry for him. In fact, I mean, Stefan Molyneux came out and he said that he was being chased around town by gang stalking, brain dead, ideologically subverted communists, just for speaking of logos. But he does have sort of an abrasive personality. So if you approach things that way publicly, don't be surprised. I mean, if you kind of act like you kind of take that attitude with people, and don't be surprised when they dislike you. Now, we should be a civil society, not find something better to do with your time other than chase around a philosopher. If you wanted to destroy a philosopher, just take a few minutes and pick his ideas apart. That will batter and bruise the philosopher worse than a beating, to destroy the philosopher's ego. Plus, it's something we can all enjoy, just like that fake Jake Morphonios getting the capital grade beat down for being a lying scumbag. I mean, wow. Oh, and to the point of lying scumbags, I just want to point out a little something interesting here. Let's see. I keep a note from time to time. Let's see what I have here. It's all in finding it. Selected manuals. No, I think not. Let's see what we got here. I'll do a screen share for a moment. Let's see. Where would I have put it? I'm looking for just a little piece of how things connect together. I'll figure it out. I'm sure you'd rather look at my ugly mug than going through to find this particular piece that I'm looking for. No, it wouldn't be. I'm basically trying to pull a little bit of information here on a note that I took a while back on the good old I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. Organization being so great and all. Regarding the Julian Assange thing that's getting rammed down our throats all day, every day. I thought I would keep it in a place called Notes. But it would seem that I have not kept it in my notes. I've crammed it somewhere else. And I may never find it. It should really, I really thought it would leap out to me, because I was looking at it earlier today. And there's a lot of things I tend not to really discuss until I'm certain about a thing, because you never know to what end you could be looking at something. And I have no idea where I've stuck this thing. And I find that very, very odd, because I was just looking at it. I'll find it. We'll pull it up later and look at it later. Let me get this other utility started, and we'll read a bit more. And I'm interested to see, okay, well, what kind of feedback do we have? We're experimenting on with this type of style. I mean, this is what the objective is right now, is to find out how this style works. Okay, I got a utility running, so that pretty much take care of the work that I'm doing. And now I can focus on something a little more entertaining to you, and to me, quite frankly. Almost too cold. Delicious. Oh yeah, and I'm not at the dinner table with you, so I'm gonna talk with my mouth open if I want to, or eat with my. Yeah, well, I guess you always have to talk with your mouth open, right? I meant, chew with my mouth open. All right. So, I'll be looking back later at this to try and examine the style, because sometimes time flows, just as we were talking about earlier from this reading. Time flows different from my perspective than it will from the perspective that I'm going to have when I go back and review this test of style. Now, where were we? I believe we had finished with "the truth is." I believe that we had stopped there. Remains the same, psychical existence, thus cannot be in an endless flow. Okay, so, but as our attention has distinguished and separated them artificially, it is obliged next to reunite them by an artificial bond. It imagines, therefore, a formless ego, indifferent and unchangeable, on which it threads the psychic states which it has set up as an independent entities. Instead of a flux of fleeting shades merging into each other, it perceives distinct and, so to speak, solid colors, set side by side like the beads of a necklace. It must perforce then suppose a thread, also itself solid, to hold the beads together. But if this colorless substratum is perpetually colored by that which covers it, it is for us, in its indeterminateness, as if it did exist, since we only perceive what is colored, or in other words, psychic states. As a matter of fact, this substratum has no reality. It is merely a symbol intended to recall unceasingly to our consciousness the artificial character of the process by which the attention places clean-cut states side by side, where actually there is a continuity which unfolds. If our existence were composed of separate states, with an impassive ego to unite them, for us there would be no duration. For an ego, which does not change, does not endure. And a psychic state which remains the same so long as it is not replaced by the following state does not endure either. Vain, therefore, is the attempt to range such states beside each other on the ego supposed to sustain them. Never can these solids strung upon a solid make up that duration which flows. What we actually obtain in this way is an artificial imitation of the internal life, a static equivalent which well lend itself better to the requirements of logic and language, just because we have eliminated it from the element of real time. But as regards the psychical life unfolding beneath the symbols which conceal it, we readily perceive that time is just the stuff it is made of. There is, moreover, no stuff more resistant nor more substantial, for our duration is not merely one instant replacing another. If it were, then there would never be anything but the present. No prolonging of the past into the actual, no evolution, no concrete duration. Duration is the continuous progress of the past which gnaws into the future and which swells as it advances. And as the past grows without ceasing, so also there is no limit to its preservation. Memory, as we have tried to prove, is not a faculty of putting away recollections in a drawer or of inscribing them in a register. There is no register, no drawer. There is not even, properly speaking, a faculty. For a faculty works intermittently, when it will or when it can, whilst the piling up of the past upon the past goes on without relaxation. In reality, the past is preserved by itself automatically. In its entirety, probably, it follows us at every instant. All that we have felt, thought, and willed from our earliest infancy is there, leaning over the present which is about to join it, pressing against the portals of consciousness that would fain leave it outside. The cerebral mechanism is arranged just so as to drive back the unconscious, almost the whole of this past, and to admit beyond the threshold only that which can cast light on the present situation or further the action now being prepared. In short, only that which can give useful work. At the most, a few superfluous recollections may succeed in smuggling themselves through the half-open door. These memories, messengers from the unconscious, remind us of what we are dragging behind us unawares. Excuse me. But, even though we may have no distinct idea of it, we feel vaguely that our past remains present to us. What are we, in fact, what is our character, if not for the condensation of the history that we have lived from our birth, nay, even before our birth, since we bring with us prenatal dispositions? Doubtless we think with only a small part of our past, but as with our entire past, including the original bent of our soul, that we desire, will, and act. Our past, then, as a whole, is made manifest to us in its impulse. It is felt in the form of tendency, although a small part of it is only known in the form of an idea. very exciting. I really thoroughly enjoy this work. From this survival of the past, it follows that consciousness cannot go through the same state twice. The circumstances may still be the same, but they will act no longer on the same person, since they find him at a new moment of his history. Our personality, which is being built up each instant with its accumulated experience, changes without ceasing. By changing, it prevents any state, although superficially identical with another, from ever repeating it in its very depth. That is why our duration is irreversible. We could not live over again a single moment, for we should have to begin by effacing the memory of all that had followed. Even could we erase this memory from our intellect, we could not from our will. Thus, our personality shoots, grows, and ripens without ceasing. Each of its moments is something new added to what was before. We may go further. It is not only something new, but something unforeseeable. Doubtless, my present state is explained by what was in me, and by what was acting on me a moment ago. In analyzing it, I shall find no other elements. But even a superhuman intelligence would not have been able to foresee simple, indivisible form, which gives to these purely abstract elements their concrete organization. For to foresee consists of projecting into the future what has been perceived in the past, or of imagining for a later time a new grouping and a new order of elements already perceived. But that which has never been perceived, and which is at the same time simple, is necessarily unforeseeable. Now, such is the case with each of our states, regarded as a moment in history that is gradually unfolding. It is simple, and it could not have already been perceived, since it concentrates in its indivisibility all that has been perceived and what the present is adding to it besides. It is an original moment of a no less original history. The finished portrait is explained by the features of the model, by the nature of the artist, by the colors spread out on the palette, but even with the knowledge of what explains it, no one, not even the artist, could have foreseen exactly what the portrait would be, or to predict it. It would have been to produce it before it was produced, an absurd hypothesis, which is its own refutation. Even so, with regards to the moments of our life of which we are the artisans, each of them is kind of creation, or each of them is a kind of creation. And just as the talent of the painter is formed or deformed, in any case, is modified under the very influence of the works he produces, so each of our states, at the moment of its issue, modifies our personality. And with that, we have grass cutting. So I suppose it's time to close the house up. If you've enjoyed this form, or if you prefer, an uninterrupted style and less conversational, leave a comment. That would be the way to improve. All right, it's been Hank. I'll catch you on the flip side.